The London Stock Exchange has always been a hub for speculation, risk-taking, and incredible fortunes. But behind the glamorous world of stocks and bonds lurk the shadows of deception. The year is 1814, and Napoleon Bonaparte, the looming figure casting a shadow over Europe, has been seemingly undefeatable till now. News breaks out that Napoleon is dead, defeated by Allied forces. London is buzzing, the stock exchange erupts, and fortunes are made overnight. But what if this incredible news was all a lie? A hoax designed not for military victory, but for financial gain. It was a plot so bold, it involved one of Britain's most famous naval heroes, Lord Cochrane. But how did he get entangled in one of the biggest scandals of all time? And was he truly guilty or just a scapegoat? And more importantly, how could a single lie, told by a mysterious man, cause shockwaves in the heart of Britain's financial capital? Let's find out. At the turn of the 19th century, Europe was embroiled in the Napoleonic Wars. England, locked in a bitter struggle with France, saw its government stretched to the limit, pouring resources into the fight against Napoleon's vast empire. The war effort was costly, and this was reflected in the government bonds traded on the London Stock Exchange. Bonds, known as omnium, fluctuated wildly depending on the news from the battlefield. For speculators, these fluctuations were an opportunity. Timing the market right could mean unimaginable profits. It's in this volatile environment that the plot of the Great Stock Exchange Hoax unfolded, against a backdrop of desperation and greed. But who would dare pull off such an audacious scheme? In February 1814, as Napoleon's power began to wane, a well-dressed gentleman appeared in Dover just after midnight on February 21st. He wore a red military uniform, and his face was tired, though not from battle, but from a long journey. This mysterious figure was Colonel Dubourg, or so he claimed, a military assistant to Lord Cathcart, a British general. His urgent dispatches, he said, contained monumental news. Napoleon Bonaparte had been killed, torn apart by Cossack soldiers in France, and the Allies had triumphed. The war was over. As Dubourg delivered this message to the ship inn's landlord, the news spread like wildfire through Dover. By 9 a.m., Dubourg arrived in London at the residence of Lord Cochrane, a naval hero, member of Parliament, and one of the key players in this mystery. At this point, government bonds, fueled by rumors of Napoleon's death and the Allies' victory, started rising sharply. Investors, thrilled by the prospect of the war's end, scrambled to buy bonds, driving prices higher and higher. Lord Cochrane, along with several others, was a member of a syndicate of speculators who had acquired significant holdings of government bonds. Now, as the price of these bonds soared, they were in a position to sell them at a massive profit. But how long could the lie hold? As the day progressed, investors became anxious. Despite the earlier wave of optimism, doubts crept into the market. Was this too good to be true? By midday, the government bond prices had peaked, only to begin falling again as investors realized that no news had been officially confirmed. Still, a final attempt was made to revive confidence. A coach rode through the streets of London, its passengers wearing the uniforms of French royalist officers, shouting that Napoleon had fallen. They scattered papers bearing the words "Vive le Roi" and "Vivent les Bourbons" in the streets of London's financial district. Yet this last-ditch effort failed. As the afternoon drew to a close, it became clear that the news had been a hoax. The price of bonds fell back to their original level, and the shockwave of the deception reverberated throughout London. The scam was meticulously designed to exploit both the political climate and the emotional volatility of investors, and the outcry was immediate. At the time, the British economy was deeply intertwined with the outcome of the Napoleonic Wars. The conspirators manipulated the government's ability to finance its war efforts, the very foundation of the British economy. By driving up the price of government bonds, they made a mockery of the nation's financial markets, shaking investor confidence. The stock exchange, stung by the scale of the fraud, launched an investigation. On February 22nd, The Times published a scathing editorial condemning the fraud of the most impudent and nefarious description. A committee was formed to uncover who was behind this audacious scam. And it didn't take long for fingers to point at the syndicate led by Lord Cochrane, along with his uncle, Andrew Cochran Johnstone, and a broker named Richard Butt. The stock exchange concluded that this group had orchestrated the hoax to inflate the price of bonds, allowing them to sell their holdings at a high price before the truth emerged and prices collapsed. Lord Cochrane was no ordinary man. He was a Navy icon, celebrated for his daring exploits against Napoleon's forces. His reputation for independence and anti-establishment views had made him a controversial figure, but also one of the most popular public figures in England. Despite this, his involvement in the hoax led to his swift fall from grace. In a highly publicized trial, Cochran and his alleged co-conspirators were found guilty of fraud. The sentence was severe. Cochran was expelled from the House of Commons, stripped of his knighthood, and dismissed from the Royal Navy. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison, and his name was tarnished in the eyes of the British public. Despite his conviction, Lord Cochrane's story didn't end with the stock exchange hoax. In fact, his later career was almost as remarkable as his earlier exploits. After serving his prison sentence, Cochran was eventually reinstated in the Royal Navy, and he went on to serve with distinction in the navies of Chile and Brazil, helping those countries win their independence from Spain. Later, in 1832, his knighthood was restored by King William IV, and he was re-elected to Parliament. In the end, Cochrane's reputation was partially rehabilitated, and today he is remembered as one of Britain's greatest masters of naval warfare. What makes the Great Stock Exchange hoax of 1814 so fascinating is the audacity of the plot. To stage a fraudulent military dispatch, complete with a fake officer, gold coins, and an elaborate staged ride through the streets of London was both brilliant and brazen. The conspirators understood how the rumor mill worked and exploited it perfectly, playing on the hopes and fears of investors to create a momentary market frenzy. In today's world of instantaneous communication, such a scheme might seem implausible, but in 1814, with no telegraph or instant news service, the scheme worked brilliantly, if only for a few hours. It was enough time for the conspirators to offload their bonds and make a significant profit, leaving the rest of the market to deal with the fallout. Lord Cochrane's involvement remains one of the most debated aspects of the hoax. While he was found guilty, many historians believe he may have been the victim of a political conspiracy. Cochrane's enemies in the Admiralty and the government had much to gain from his downfall. His outspoken criticism of corruption had made him powerful enemies, and some believe the hoax trial was a convenient way to remove a troublesome figure. But what do you think? Was Lord Cochrane a victim of political intrigue, or was he truly involved in the plot? And could such a scheme like this happen today in our modern interconnected world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.